Bitcoin fixes the money. The Beef Initiative fixes the food and nutrition. Step into some new awareness that incorporates some much needed food intelligence into your life. This is Texas Slim with Texas Slim's Vision. Hey, good morning, guys. Texas Slim here. I'm back in rural Texas, up in the Texas Panhandle today, and we have a very special recording today. We have Will Harris with White Oak Pastures. We have basically been working together, or at least in some discussions since, I believe, late last year. And we've kind of gone back and forth, and we've designed a conference that we're going to have in Bluffton, Georgia at White Oak Pastures, September 16th and 17th. So I thought this was an opportune time to get us together, share a little education, a little feedback, and kind of project into what we're going to do in the conference. Kind of where we both have come and where we're going, and to get some clarity of the food industry in current times. So, hello, Will. How are you doing today?
Hey, Slim. Good. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are and everything, and I know it's a balance to kind of get on these podcasts and to use social media in a way that people can see as productive and just not some type of entertainment value. And I think it's always a responsibility of people in this space as far as regenerative farming and ranching to kind of really speak from a place of transparency and truth, and not kind of hide behind, vills of mass media that you get out there and the distractions that are going on. So thanks for taking the time. Why don't we go ahead and introduce, we'll act like nobody's ever seen you or I, and I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of go into some dialogue.
Good. So you're broadcasting from rural Texas, and I'm broadcasting what I suspect is equally rural.
It is.
I'm in Bluffton, Georgia, and I am 50 miles from a Walmart. And there aren't many places east of the Mississippi you can be 50 miles from a Walmart. No. But proudly, I'm at one of them right now. This is the middle of our farm. Bluffton, Georgia is in the middle of our farm. Our farm is White Oak Pastures. It's my grandchildren had a grandchild born last week, Slim. It was my sixth one. And
congratulations.
Thank you. That is the sixth. That's the sixth generation of my family to be on this farm. My great grandfather came here in 1866, and we're still here. Today we pasture raise 5 different red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits, and we hand butcher them in a USDA inspected slaughter facility that I built here on the farm. We pasture raise 5 poultry species: chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, and ducks, and we hand butcher them in a separate USDA inspected facility that I built here on the farm. We raise pastured eggs, organic vegetables, honey, and a number of other little ancillary sorts of the bounty of nature that we use to monetize the farm.
Yeah, and that's that basically, I think the one thing that people need to understand is that you came from your great grandparent, your ancestors, 1866, like you said. What a magical and interesting time to establish a farm in the South in the United States of America. And so your family heritage from 1866 to 2022 has gone through the full spectrum of agriculture, basically, that we can reflect on in the United States. And so you have tons of history that you can reflect on. You use the word, and where I grew up is very prevalent, and in what you were and what you were trained to be was a commodity cowboy. And I've heard you say that many times, and I think it would be kind of good to give a kind of groundwork. what do we mean when we say commodity cowboy? And what do we actually mean whenever we say, land tools and regenerative? And, to give a kind of a broad spectrum of where your ancestors came from, what you were born into, and then what you are right now. And then we can kind of get into basically the discussion of food supply right now and what we're changing and what we see as problems.
Good. What I think I enjoy most about the farm is how in the 150 something years and 6 generations it's come full cycle. The most of what we know about the way my great granddad and granddad ran the farm is just anecdotal. They didn't keep good log books, but we do know that they would have had a multi-species operation like we do, a vertically integrated operation like we do, and there would have been a lot of emphasis in their program on the quality of the land, the welfare of the animals, and the local rural community, because it's what they had. My father took over. My father was born in 1920. He took over the farm post World War II, and he really revolutionized things. That's what was going on post World War II in 1945 and beyond. And the changes he made could be broadly classified as centralization, industrialization, and commoditization. Under my dad's watch, he moved this farm from multi-species vertical integration to being what we now refer to as a factory farm model cattle operation. We were a link in the beef chain that raised the calves, and we actually had a feedlot here on the farm for many years. I came up, and my father was prosperous for his time. He did well. I came up under his tutelage. All I ever wanted to do was run this farm as the industrial cattle operation that he had established. I went to the University of Georgia, graduated in 1976 with a degree in animal science from the College of Agriculture. I came back here and helped him run the farm until I ran it myself, very, very industrially. I torqued down on the factory model harder than he did. And I ran it that way for 20 years. In the mid-90s, I started rethinking things for a lot of different reasons. It wasn't financial. We were fairly comfortable, not rich people, but we had no debt, and I paid taxes every single year. We were comfortable. But I did the things I didn't like. I started changing things, and fast forward 25 more years to where we are now. And really, financially, it has not been overwhelmingly rewarding. We're fine. We're cash flow positive. We do have debt now. But from a fulfillment perspective, two of my $3 in their spouses came back to help me run the farm. Yeah. And they probably wouldn't have done that had I continued to operate in that linear commodity beef model.
Yeah, I think that's a good point kind of for me to respond to that. What did that bring to basically the family awareness, the basically yearning maybe for some legacy and heritage in a different way that wasn't based on that centralized linear kind of operation in which, many families have been very successful in the United States ever since World War II, because I've seen you several quotes that you've talked about is, a guy shows up on y'all's farm and your dad was sitting there and he has a bag of basically nitrogen fertilizer and he pours it down on the ground and says, "Hey, I'll be back, pretty soon and we're going to talk again." And that had been, never been done before. We went from making bombs to fertilizer and all of a sudden, we had won, right? We were victorious and we were going to go out there and these were, I think, in my perspective, some dangerous things to say is that we're going to go feed the world because I believe in the long run that has been hijacked as far as the good intentions of that. But, going back in the 50s, let's say after World War II, late 40s and 50s, nitrogen and fertilizer became something that all of a sudden we could leverage. And that's what your father did, because he did it with all the good intentions in the world. And he really he wanted to feed the community. He wanted to basically make a living for his family. He wanted to create that and keep that legacy going.
You're right. The damage began when we imposed that linear factory model using all sorts of technologies into this very complex system that was a farm.
Right.
And then the guy with the bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer you referenced is a great example of that. Ammoniated fertilizer, I believe, was invented in Germany in the 1880s, but farmers didn't embrace it because it was very expensive and just wasn't practical, economically practical. But post World War II, all that munitions manufacturing that wasn't needed anymore could be repurposed to make ammonium nitrate fertilizer, in that case, ammoniated fertilizer generally, cheap enough that farmers could buy it. So my dad put that out. The benefits were immediate. 3 days later, the grass was way higher than the rest of it. But the unintended consequences was it oxidized the organic matter in the soil, wreaked havoc on the microbial life in the soil. It started desertification, but we didn't see it for 70 years. It just wasn't apparent. The unintended consequences were unnoticed consequences.
Yeah, from that first point of pouring that bag of nitrate fertilizer on the grass and, some of the agriculture there, throughout the decades, and we'll say 70 years, that chemical apparatus has just expanded in a more linear way, to where, we went from, fertilizer, and then we went into herbicides, pesticides. There's, thousands of different chemicals out there being used in the agricultural space. And at first, we didn't really think about it. We didn't have to. Like, we were trying to get to abundance. We were really, with good intentions, trying to feed people that we'd never been able to do in the history of man in a way that we hadn't. But I get asked this all the time, as far as, is what is going on right now in monocropping and everything, is it nefarious? Is the use of all these chemicals something that they're basically using to control the farmer and the rancher in the United States and across the world? And I know there's many answers to that, but what I always like to just tell people is that we got to get back to the source of the seed of how we got here in the first place, and then we can actually bring out some people's intentions of the past and into the future, because that type of education, I believe, is the most important thing that needs to be discussed, needs to be broadcasted out to the people out there that are trying to feed their families in a nice and nutritional way. And whenever we do it, approach it that way, what we do is we uncover these discussions that a lot of people don't know how to involve themselves with and basically participate in. And whenever I talked to you back in November, I said, we're going to have a conference, and you asked me, why do you want to do this? Why are you doing this, Slim? And I said, well, flat out, what we're doing is we're trying to save children's lives. And if you can get people to focus on that being the intent, and that starts with good nutrition food that comes from the soil itself, then that discussion is broad and it's wide, and you can be transparent for why you're doing what you're doing. And, I'll let you kind of lend into that as far as why you get up every day, why your daughters came back to the farm, and what you see now and what we're going to do in the future.
Well, so you started this out with is it nefarious?
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you from the producer perspective, the farmer perspective, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. These the guys who are farming. In my area, I'm the only quote regenerative farmer here. This is a very traditional corn, cotton, peanut, industrially farmed, monoculturally farmed territory. And none of my farmers, none of my friends and neighbors and relatives that are farming that way believe that they are damaging their land, and those things are not. They're farming the way their daddy did, their granddaddy did. We're third generations into it now.
Right.
They farm in the way that the university, corporate extension, county agents tell them to farm. They farm the way the big ag tells them to farm, the big food tells them to farm, and they're heavily invested in it. They've got, a cotton picker can cost $1 million, and it won't do a damn thing but pick cotton. That's all you can do with it. So they're heavily invested in this kind of industrial agriculture, so they feel good about it. Now, is it nefarious beyond that? Yeah, I think so. So I'm old enough I can remember big tobacco, and cigarettes were advertised, and the any health implications was denied. And the evidence later showed that big tobacco knew that cigarettes were carcinogenic and causing all sorts of problems way before it was released to the public. That's the reason they had the huge tobacco settlements that those companies paid literally hundreds of millions of dollars to states in reparations. So, do I think that's probably the same thing going on with big ag, big food? I bet so. That would be my bet. I would bet that 30, 40 years from now, we'll be talking about big food the same way we're talking about big tobacco. So, yeah.
Yeah, in that pathway, I think it's something you see a lot of things going on in the space. You see a lot of things going on in big ag on a global standpoint. I saw one of your Instagram posts on your blog, and people are worried about food supply shortages, and they're worried about why would we not have an abundance of food in these days and times. And I believe it was last October I told everybody, it's like, well, I think there'll be a food supply shortage in the future, and especially in the fall, maybe winter 2023, because it's not going to be something that we don't have enough food. It's going to be a supply chain issue. And, that's something that is done basically on purpose, I believe, during times of chaos, like during COVID. That opened a lot of people's eyes. And then moving forward, what they see is whenever they can create a food supply shortage, maybe it is a supply chain issue that's been exposed. What they do is they can profit off of that because they control all the market access to all of our food. And I believe that people don't understand the lack of market access that they do have and how much it can be manipulated and how much it's manipulated every day. And you've seen this before you opened up your processing plant there on the farm and the ranch, and you now basically participate in a decentralized vertical integration where you control your processing. You have become your own market access. And so, your customers, maybe they stressed a little during COVID because it kind of got everybody off guard, but moving forward, I think that you and I and a lot of people in the space will do the public justice in explaining what market access is, what it truly is, where the bottleneck is, and the type of nefarious bullshit that goes on with the lack of market access that we have going on in this country. And I have no problem talking about that at all.
So I think time has shown us that there's a lot of money in the shortage business, whether you're talking about baby formula or masks or toilet paper. If you don't have to create a shortage, you can create the perception of a shortage. And it can be really good for your bottom line because of increased margins. So let's talk a little bit about resilience versus efficiency.
Okay.
So, we talk about complicated systems and complex systems. And a complicated system is like this computer link we've got right here. There's a lot of things going on to make it work. And if one component ceases to work, it doesn't work anymore. We lose connection. Your body and my farm are complex systems. There's a lot going on to make your body work or make this farm work. And if one component fails, the system morphs and it continues to operate after a fashion. So the tools that reductive science has given us works great on complicated systems like this, like a factory or this computer link or your iPhone, whatever. It doesn't work so well on complex systems because in complex systems, the reductive science doesn't allow for the unanticipated consequences, the unintended consequences that occur from implementing the technology. When you bring that technology in, that factory model, you create a very linear system that can be scaled up incredibly to gain efficiency that is just beyond belief. In a complex system that's very cyclical, not linear, cyclical, it's not real scalable. It's scalable to a point, but after a point, that doesn't work anymore. The good news is it's highly replicatable. You can build another one and another one and another one. It's not a tsunami, it's bubbles. So in our food system, food production and delivery system, we have applied all that technology from reductionist science to make this incredibly large linear model that's scaled up beyond belief. And in doing that, we gained all that efficiency to make food obscenely cheap, but we lost the resiliency. It doesn't take much adversity to make it happen. Resiliency means that a system can go back to its previous operating form after some insult occurs to it.
Right.
So we swapped all of our resiliency for efficiency to get cheap food. And, when something bad happens, we're going to have to pay the piper. And unfortunately, the food supply is controlled by a very small number of multinational corporations. So managing the supply to maximize profit is pretty easy as compared to if there was just a bunch of little white oak pasture bubbles out here.
Yeah, and that's a good kind of a visual that people can kind of understand, and that's why I always try to inform people and let them understand where we came from. I grew up in small town Texas. My grandfather came from even smaller town Texas. He had about 2 sections in the Texas Panhandle, and his whole purpose, nothing more from being a farmer and an animal producer. He was born in the 1890s, and his purpose in life was to feed his family first and then to help feed the community. And that community started with everybody down the road. And what they would do is, they would swap a half a hog for a quarter of beef or whatever it is, eggs, fowl. That's what they did. And they knew that they could rely on it. They knew exactly where it came from. They knew the dirt, the soil that it came from. And then after that, they went out there and they fed the community. And so all of the food basically came from a 60-mile radius. And now our food comes from a global radius that is so complex, as you say, that, and its intent is about efficiencies. Well, those efficiencies have kind of run their course where they're not really efficient anymore. But one thing that they are definitely have succeeded in is making food cheap quality and cheap by the American dollar. And that is a dangerous place to go, because when that is your intent, each time you make that efficiency model in that linear way, you're decreasing the value of that nutrition that we should be delivering to our bodies. And no matter what it says on the package anymore, it doesn't really matter. No matter how many touch points, with efficiencies, you get those touch points, like you said. Each touch point is something that basically decreases the food in nutritional value. And if you can keep it simple like that, it's not complicated. And as the individual consumer, if they can say, hey, I'm going to take a pause, I'm going to take a step back here and kind of understand what our food system used to be, what is it now, and what are my viable options? And you've created viable options, of course. You talk about Bluffton being very rural. There's less than 150, 200 people that live in that area. Most of them basically work at White Oak Pastures. And I've seen the video footage. I've been to that part of Georgia, and it is decayed. It's decayed in ways, and the reason it was decayed is because we lost the nutritional value of our food based on this linear efficiency model that has gotten to where it's metabolically bankrupting our society in a way. It's metabolically bankrupting our children. And what you are is a perfect example of how we can reintroduce things of the past with the efficiencies of today of a vertical integration into food. And that's what I find fascinating is when people understand vertical integration instead of linear, then they understand what we're talking about.
The centralization you refer to, not feeding your local community, but building huge, efficient food complexes. If you want to be in the vegetable business in a big way, you do it in the Central Valley of California. And if you want to be in the corn and soy business, you do it in the Great Plains. If you want to be in the cotton business, it's the Deep South. And it's a centralized approach, and this centralization literally rendered rural America to be financially irrelevant.
Yeah,
it impoverished rural America because it wasn't needed anymore. When I was part of a centralized system, I had 3 or 4 minimum wage employees on this farm. Today we got 180 employees on this farm. My payroll went from 50 something $1,000 a week to today it's $5,000 a week. Today it's $100,000 a week, or $5 million a year. And that money turns here in Bluffton, Georgia. The USDA tells us that farmers get, I think it's 14.3 cents of every payroll dollar, less than 15 cents. I don't know decimals. Here we get 100 cents. And that sounds like that's great and it's good. But what's true is all those externalized costs that went somewhere else are here. So we're turning that $5 million worth of payroll in Bluffton, Georgia, instead of Wall Street or Silicon Valley. We were re-internalizing the costs that big food had externalized.
That's a good way to put it. And once again, it brings back to the community, and you're going to, 3 to 4 people that, were used in the centralized way and for, the type of factory farming. What I see now is people that actually create their own market access as far as producers and processors. They are reinventing kind of a labor market that we haven't seen in a long time in rural America. I've got a couple of people that are part of the beef initiative, Justin Trammell and Cole Bolton, and they both are opening. One's opened up, and they're about to open up the processing center in Texas, micro processing centers, and they'll have between 15 and probably 25 to 30 employees, and every one of them are local. Every one of them are getting a new education as far as processing a different way, not the factory farming way, not the commodity cowboy processing way, but more something that we're reaching back from the past again, and we're saying, hey, we're going to have butchers, we're going to be able to have a meat market. We have a meat market. These employees are actually making now more than what they pay in somebody like JBS or Cargill or Tyson or National. And what they're discovering is that the opportunities for the community is just not the food, but it's the education, plus it is that labor market that you're right. It's in rural America. It was dealt to be obsolete. And that's something that I've found, looking deeper in with you, there's a lot of people that want to learn how to do this. And, I don't know if a lot of people realize the type of education and the true educator that you are. And most of the people producers that come into the beef initiative, they tell me first and foremost, they're an educator. They don't sell anything. All they have to do is educate why they do what they do, and that's when people become fascinating and they want to learn more and they want to make it a lifestyle. You have an internship program that you do out there at White Oak Pastures, correct?
we have an internship program that I'm very proud of. We take 6 interns 4 times a year for 3 months. So
Mm-hmm.
24 per year on the production side. And they spend all of our species have a manager, so cattle manager, sheep manager, hog manager, garden manager, etc. They'll spend a week or two with each one of them, and there's a curriculum that we adhere to, and it's pretty good. I'm very proud of it. We've got some great employees from it, and we've shipped some people out of here that are doing well on their own farms somewhere else. And we've just added this brand new. We just got our first, well, I guess our first two processing interns. I don't want too many of them right now. We got to work it out. But we take these people are on the production side. They're actually in the processing plant, in the red meat plant, and the poultry plant, learning how to slaughter, process animals, make them monetizable. You know,
Right.
consumers don't buy cows and hogs and sheep. They buy beef and pork and lamb. And if you're not set up to make that conversion, you can't monetize it, and your program won't work. The newest thing is last year we founded a nonprofit 501c3 called Center for Agricultural Resilience, and it is I'm very proud of it. It's not a how-to farm session. It's kind of a 30,000-foot session that teaches people how to think about the food production system differently. We talk about three legs on the stool being production, out there in the pasture, the part we all love, the fun part,
Right.
about processing, which is making it into a monetizable product so you can live to fight another day, and then the actual monetization, which is uh, we raise this livestock in places like Georgia and the Panhandle of Texas and Missouri and Arkansas, but they consume on those zip codes, those high disposable income zip codes, and we got to get it there. So it's something that we're very proud of. We've been in this space longer than most. We're 25 years at a minimum, and we've learned some stuff, and now we're really interested in sharing it. The appetite to learn about things like this did not exist, certainly not 25 years ago when I started, but even 10 years ago. But today, people who don't intend to farm, people who just want to eat well, live well, are interested in this resilient system that works with the cycles of nature. And we're just delighted to have the opportunity to share it with them. And that's kind of what our conference is, that you and I are doing next month is part of that.
Yeah, it is, and that's a good way to kind of highlight the conference, because what you talked about and I brought up in the very beginning is you're giving people market access to education they want. It's not that they have to be producers, but what they want to do is what they want to engineer a new market access to a food that they can believe in, and to a community that they can believe in, that is like-minded, that they want to support. And I find that most people, they want to give back in so many different ways. And tell me about the nonprofit angle of that. What is it called? And how we're going to talk about that at the conference, and then we'll go into some other things that we're going to talk about in the conference.
So we've been doing as much as we could towards education for a long time, and as I said, we've educated a lot of people. But it takes a lot of money to bring people to Bluffton, Georgia, and put them up here for 3 or 4 days and feed them. And we do the education with our staff people, like my cow guy and sheep lady and hog guy and shop guy and fencing team are the ones that provide the input for the tutorial. So they're away from work. And we reached a point that we were doing all we could afford to do, literally, but it still wasn't enough. We were still pissing people off that wanted to to participate.
Right.
So we're on the nonprofit, and we've had people, I won't say the names, but companies and wealthy individuals provide money for scholarships to bring people here and make it affordable for the farm and for White Oak Pastures. It's a reason they call it a nonprofit. I mean, we don't make money on it, but it allows us to share what we've learned over the last 25 years without going broke. I should say that I'm very proud of our business. As I mentioned, 180 employees. We sell 25 or $26 million worth of stuff. But it is very, very marginally profitable.
Right.
We don't make much money. I have
Yeah.
friends who are CPAs and MBAs, and I'll tell them very candidly what the numbers are. And most people who are educated in proper business just think it's absurd that we would invest that much personal wealth and take that kind of risk for such a shitty little return.
Well, we
That's
call
French. That's a
yeah.
French term.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we call that in in the Bitcoin space that we are participating in and educating on as well is, we call that very fiat mindset and that's basically our food is pretty shitty for a lot of reasons these days. One of it is because our dollar is debased. And people are looking for these false profits and this false value that I believe, it doesn't exist anymore. So whenever you say that you're not making a lot of money, your value somewhere else, and you place your value, your store of value in the land itself, and the lifestyle itself, the legacy itself. Go ahead, you're about to say something.
Well, to comment on that is, for me, wealth is land and animals, another building that does something and another, cash to me is, I the example I use is, I need a certain amount of blood pumping through this 240-pound body to keep me alive. Maybe it's 5 pints or 6, or I don't know how much it is. It's a certain amount.
Right.
That's the cash. Beyond that, I don't want any extra blood. So if we get extra cash, we buy another herd of cattle, another flock of sheep, or another piece of land, and we stay cash broke because of that. And I'm fine with it. I think I'm building wealth. We don't take a quarterly view or an annual review. A quarterly report means nothing to me. An annual
Right.
P&L means nothing to me. It's generational, and that's where I did want to comment on something. You talked about the quality of food a minute ago, and you referenced it then. I want to call this to people's attention. I rail about the centralization, industrialization, and commoditization of agriculture. And we hadn't talked about the commoditization yet. But
Right.
there was a time when we were part of a local food system that if I was a hog farmer, I wanted to have the reputation for producing the best hogs in the county, because not so much out of vanity, probably some vanity, but not so much out of vanity. But if my reputation was I raised the best hogs in the county, the butcher would pay me a premium. Say, this is Will Harris's hogs.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a tomato farm, I want to raise the best tomatoes in the community for the same reason. They're worth more. Or eggs or beef, or it doesn't matter. The way to prosperity prior to commoditization is to produce the best food that people could get and then charge a premium for it. When we commoditized, or I guess USDA commoditized farm products, they set minimum standards. And then the role changed for the farmer. It was a race to the bottom. You wanted to produce the cheapest product you can produce as long as it met those very meager, immediate minimum standards. So you were not only not incentivized to raise the best tomatoes or hogs or corn or wheat for the miller, you were incentivized by being good at just meeting the bare minimums and not spending much on it. Because you can get the commodity price no matter how good it was. So, industrialization, where we really ruined the land and the water and the climate, and then imprison the animals. Uh, Centralization, where we impoverished rural America, and then commoditization, where we turned the food from the best we could produce to the worst we could get by with. Those are the things that we stand against, and then we try to teach about people about how to move away from that system.
It is. I mean, the incentives are out of whack. They're totally turned upside down. And something as simple as educating people on the commodity world. The amount of fake commodities that they inject into our food supply right now is out of control, from seed oils to different types of crappy proteins that they call are nutritious. It has gotten to the point where it's a train wreck. And my favorite term is getting to the source of the seed of what freaking nutrition is. Well, it's a lack of commodities that are fake in your diet. How about that's hard to look at, to where people can start understanding how commodities are subsidized, how the value is taken out of them, even if they do start with value, and how they can be manipulated for the lowest common denominator being the standard of that food delivery. And you talk about, taking a little pride in your hog, taking a little pride in your pumpkins. I grew up close to a place called Floydada, Texas. That's where we look at farmers markets of days gone by. And, you had the monthly in the fall, you had the farmers market. Everybody came to that farmers market because they wanted to show the love, the care, the intentionality that they put into that animal, or that they put into that pumpkin, or they put into that squash, whatever it is. There's something there that for 365 days, that producer is doing the best he can with what he has, so he could actually have something, an end result that had value to his community. That has been totally stolen from us. It is been stolen from our mindsets, and it's been stolen from our educational systems, our institutions. I live in where I grew up was Canyon, Texas. We have an agricultural university here. I can walk in that university, and the regenerative mindset and the regenerative curriculum in there is frowned upon. And you look at okay, who is writing these educational curriculums? Well, it goes back into the people that started it in the first place, and that it's got here. And that's where we have to really we have to juggle that. We have to. It's a fine line, because all I did was grow up around commodity cowboys. They're my friends. It's not talking, like you said before, it's not against the producers themselves, because they're doing the best they can. They work their asses off. They do everything that they can to survive and to support their family. And one thing that I see right now, and I was thinking about this yesterday, and it's a tough subject to bring up, but up here in Amarillo, Texas, they just announced a $600 million producer-owned processing plant for beef. And people don't realize the Texas Panhandle produces a lot of dang beef. And well, that's great. And they say they're going to have 1,600 jobs that are basically going to be filled from that processing plant. Well, I want to ask them one thing. What kind of market access are you going to give the locals of the Amarillo and the Panhandle community for all that beef? I don't see it happening. I see that beef being sold across the seas, or across, the market access that has been designed by the conglomerates, the global conglomerates that you brought up. And that's where people get confused, is they don't really understand market access. They don't understand these type of processing centers, even if they are producer owned. A collective, let's say a collective of producers, that's kind of a risky business these days. And you and I kind of touched on it before the recording. You want to kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure. I too worry about people building processing plants these days. I built one in 2007, I think. And we had some tough times, but we did survive, and I think we survived mostly due to the timing. I sold Whole Foods Market the first pound of American grass-fed beef that they marketed as American grass-fed beef. Pure, sheer, dumb luck, but I did. And as a result, it caught traction. and we sold everything we could produce through Whole Foods for a long time. That relationship is cool. We still sell Whole Foods, but it's not nearly the relationship it was. We sell now a lot online, ship FedEx, UPS to direct to consumers. And the reason that relationship cooled is not because the Whole Foods and other grocers are heartless people that don't want to see people like me make it. That's not the case. The fact is that industrial food production, big farming, big factory farming, and uh, big ag and big food all evolved together post World War II. Prior to World War II, those didn't really exist as a thing. Post World War II, those three entities co-evolved, and they developed a codependency on each other. And now the guy that's doing the buying for Whole Foods Market, we'll just pick on them, he needs to pick up the phone and say, I need 48,000 pounds of 6-ounce fillets delivered to the following 6 warehouses next week. And nobody can do that except Tyson and JBS and those kinds of producers. A guy like, we're bigger than most in terms of family farm, privately owned. And I'll never see 48,000 pounds of 6-ounce fillets in one truck. It just won't happen. It's just
Right.
not good. So, market access. So, yeah, this administration set aside $1 billion for small and medium plants to processing plants, poultry and red meat. And so many of my people I know in this business are raising animals in a regenerative manner, and they say, wow, the hill they see is getting them processed. That's the hill that's right there in front of them. They produce them to get them processed. Well, they're going to build a plant somewhere, Texas or Alabama or Arkansas. And they'll get up out of that hill and say, well, we got them processed. But there's another hill, and this market access. Where we're going to go with them? Who's going to pay me for them? At this point, you got more in them than you had to start with. When you raise that live cow, you could dump it in the commodity market. Now you've spent another $500 a head processing it, and you got to extract that value. And market access is very, very hard. We've invested a lot of time and effort and energy and money in our online store and for oil fulfillment warehouse. We do oil fulfillment here on the farm, and it's a very steep learning curve for us.
Well, and I think that's where we get into perspective as far as what market access, distribution, logistics, everything that gets involved with, you have shipping, you have warehouse space, you have so much to, make sure that your safety and the quality of your product is there. So it's something that is daunting. Well, one thing that you do see, and you've been a pioneer of this, is one, that it can be done. Okay. But you don't look at it on a macro scale as like we're going to go feed the world. No, what you do, if your intent is to open up a processing center and to produce your own product and to have the logistics and the supply chain lines and the market access that basically feeds a smaller regional size of population, then it is doable. And that's where people need to start really wrapping their heads around there. If this is going to be a lifestyle choice in which they are going to be, as far as consumers or producers, the success lies into basically, let's say something we can't even compare to you because you've expanded out through all these years. About 15 years you've been doing this. In today's days and times, if you want to start and you want to make this a lifestyle, either being the consumer or the producer, look at a 60-mile radius and say, what can I do in that 60-mile radius? Because if you take that approach and you lose the macro scale that we're drilled into our heads every day through social media, through media itself, through the internet, people get back thinking about where they're standing, their home, their community, and then they can say, okay, now I can do something that is viable. It's not overwhelming. I've got a group of people that maybe, like within the beef initiative, what we're going to do, because we are selling beef now, and we're going to be able to open it up to other producers. A lot of those producers have either free market access through a processing center or they have a processing center. What they really want to do is they just want to be found in their local areas. And they're not looking about somebody being in basically the panhandle of Texas shipping beef to New York. They're thinking about somebody in the panhandle of Texas feeding that mile radius. And if we can kind of help educate people on that, saying we don't need bigger processing centers, we need a number of smaller processing centers that basically can supply to a meat store, a butcher, just like you said earlier. You know, that butcher is going to pay that premium for that quality beef. If we create that micro consumer demand that is based on community, there's a win situation there, and it's not as daunting.
So now I'm not sure the 60-mile radius is the right number. That's situational, but I'll support.
Right, it is situational.
I'll support what you said in that currently we ship product, beef, pork, lamb, poultry, whatever, to 48 states, and I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to. I spent $7.2 million building processing facilities, and I built the smallest one I thought I could build cost effectively. And I was smart enough to build it in Clay County, Georgia, which is, Forbes said that in 2021 we were the poorest county in America. So,
congratulations.
Everybody got claim to fame. That's mine.
Right.
You know, I have to sell enough product, which is $25 million worth a year, to cash flow that borrowed money that I used to build a processing plant. Now, I don't want to ship to 48 states.
Right.
You know, Atlanta is 3 hours up that road, and Orlando is about 4 or 5 hours down that road. And it seemed like, sure, for goodness, I could sell enough stuff. I mean, I don't need that many. You know, people. Research says that people spend about $1,000 a year on meat and poultry. That's about what the average person spends. You know, to do $25 million worth of business, I don't have to have that many customers.
No.
But with current acceptance of regenerative, humanely raised protein, I have to reach way out to touch enough people to cash flow my business. Hopefully, as awareness, you mentioned earlier about we're in the teaching business. Hopefully, as awareness dawns on consumers, there'll be more and more of them buying closer and closer to home. I want to give up my business in Texas to you and your people. I want y'all to have it.
Right.
But I got to replace it. I got to replace it with business in Georgia, Florida, and Alabama.
Exactly.
I'm right here where the three states come together. So that's just kind of the evolution. That's where we are with it.
And that's a good point. When I use that 60-mile radius, I'll give some shout outs right now. I'll plug some guys that have come into the beef initiative, and they're having a lot of success because they're kind of being found in their communities. Justin Trammell of Panhandle Meats, he wants 60-mile radius. Cole Bolton of K&C Cattle down south of Austin, he wants the state of Texas. Jason Rick of Rick Ranches, you know, he's in Colorado where we just had the previous conference. He wants that western of Colorado, and he'd be fine. And that's what he's achieving right now. So every producer processor is going to have their different radius that they want to target. And that's where we come from the past as far as the commodity cowboy and the factory farming. You want to talk about competition. Well, with what we're doing, what you've pioneered, what the Beef Initiative is trying to establish as far as our mission statement is that there is no competition here, guys. We got plenty of room. We got plenty of people to feed, but it starts in a smaller micro level of a community-based kind of approach and that market access. And if we can do that, then, we're popping up like, everywhere across the United States. Everybody's winning, everybody's getting educated, and everybody basically is getting back to their roots as far as from nutrition to community to legacy and to heritage. That's what makes me very proud about how much progress we've made even since you and I, our first conversation. When we talk about education again, we've talked about the conference. What I really want to do is for people to understand that these conferences they're a call to action in many ways. They're a discovery, they're a definition, and then they're a call to action that you can leave this conference. And this is what I found out first too, and I want the Georgia Food Intelligence Summit to basically be something that changes people's lives because they attended it. So you are kicking it off on Friday. So we're going to plug our conference. We're going to market it right now. And so let's talk about the conference. Let's talk about your family. Let's talk about your grandchild. Let's bring some fun into this conversation. So people are going to yearn for a little bit more, and they're going to go and buy their tickets. So what are you planning on? We're going to have farm tours, and you're going to be kicking off, and we're going to be, of course, doing some education, some small little workshops. So why don't you take it from here, what you want people to understand about this summit and what you're going to be talking about.
So we're fiercely proud of what we've done here for the last 25 years. We've not built a fantastic economic machine that generates a lot of money, but we have done a lot of things we're proud of with reference to the land and the animals and the community. And I am not much on presenting. I despise standing up in front of a bunch of people with a PowerPoint and trying to stay on track. But what I do enjoy doing is taking people out to the pasture and telling them what we do and fielding questions and leading discussions. That's my idea of education. So we've got a 1-ton truck that'll seat about 20 people on it in the back, and we'll take different sessions while they're doing things in our little event center, which is an old church. I'll be taking people out to the pasture and telling them and talking about what they want to talk about.
Right.
It can go so many different ways. There's a lot of natural science out there. There's a lot of animal welfare out there. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of economics. There's a lot of different places that can go. And how it all comes together is kind of what I hope we're able to demonstrate to people.
Well, I think giving access, and for the next year, I'm going to be using the word access and market access a lot. What we're doing is we're giving market access to history and how things are going to be in the future. And what we're going to do is allow people to come out there, and you talked about touring around the farm there. And being on we're going to have 4 different words that you get to do that. And this summit, basically, that I've learned from our last 2, they're like a big old family gathering, and they're like a family reunion, and everybody, you're not meeting strangers at these places. And what we're doing is, I find that the Q&A part of these conversations are the most valuable thing that people are taking away with. And it lends back into what you just said, is this ain't a PowerPoint type of thing. That's why I don't want to call it a conference, because conferences are kind of, I don't know, they're played out in my mind. But what it is, it's a family gathering, a family reunion where we all come to a summit and we all have an open discussion, and we get to ask those questions that we're not afraid to ask. We get to answer those questions that we know that people want to hear or need to hear. And what that does is it gives a sense of empowerment. I think a lot of people these days don't have a sense of empowerment with money, with their health, or with their food. And I can't think of a better time, in Bluffton, Georgia, September 16th and 18th, with the type of education, the Q&A sessions, the farm tours, the overnight visits, everything that people get to participate in. We're going to basically feed, we're going to sell 100 tickets. That's what we're wanting to sell. So we need 100 people to buy tickets. Well, guess what? We're going to feed, I think you guys got 4 to 5 meals. We'll be feeding everybody every meal that they attended this summit. So by saying that we're going to feed everybody, let's talk about what we're going to feed. What are we going to have on the menu? As far as, it doesn't have to go down to the dish itself, but just everything that you're thinking.
Well, they don't let me in the kitchen much, but
right.
You can be assured that there will be beef, pork, lamb, poultry, all grown here on the farm and processed here on the farm. In fact, those animals never been anywhere but here.
Right.
There's vegetables from our garden. We got about a 3-acre garden that we raise food for us here, for our restaurant and our store. We do have, I know we've got some cabins for lodging. We've got places for people to camp. They're limited. We only have so many of them.
Sure. That's why we're at 100 people. Yeah.
We got unlimited places for people to camp. And we actually have an RV park that we built recently, and it stays pretty full. So if you're going to try to lodge with us or be in an RV, you need to let us know. And again, campers are welcome. And we eat well here.
Yeah, we're going to eat really well. And, we're going to invite some people that are in the local community. There's going to be a lot of reflection of, everything, the surrounding areas as well. And you talk about lodging. The lodging is going to be, on one of your, I believe, horse pastures is what Jody told me. It's something that, if you want to do some primitive camping, you got it. RV spots, they're asking, people buy tickets. We're letting them know there's a couple RV spots. The cabins they're basically spoken for. The lodging is there. The lodging is close by. I think 12 miles. There's a couple of hotels. It's not a wide variety, but there's plenty of places for everybody to stay. We even found one person that's attending the conference found a bed and breakfast of a older family there. That's what they do. They have a bed and breakfast. So I think their bed and breakfast is going to be pretty full. So we're creating market access that not too many people have in the country right now. We're creating market access to your legacy heritage farm and ranch that's been there from the 1860s. We're creating market access to a new form of education. We're creating market access to like-minded people that are going to move forward. And not only are we going to be talking about food, we're going to be talking about the history of the heritage woman in modern times now. We're going to talk about homeschooling. That's something that's very important on people's minds these days. We're going to be talking about home birthing. We're going to be talking about the different forms of medical options you have in the United States right now. We're going to talk about nutrition from pure animal protein. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin and how ranchers and farmers, and I know you and I haven't even talked about Bitcoin, but we will, but we're going to educate people on Bitcoin and the store of value that it is. And so that's our obligation and our responsibility to do that. So we're looking at this summit. It's going to be about sound money, about sound health, about sound communications for a sound future. And so every one of those touch points is that we all get to come together for thankful for your grace for letting us have it there at White Oak Pastures. I cannot tell you how much I feel as far as being the level of gratitude that I have for meeting you. Charles Mayfield of Mayfield Pastures, he's the one that basically introduced us, and you've known Charles for years, and just the amount of people that we're meeting because we're networking in this way is, I believe it's a gift from God. And I think we're just so lucky to be able to pull this off. It's not about making money. It's about exposure to some education and lifestyle. I call it the new international lifestyle. And it's a value for value exchange that I believe people are yearning for. So before we even have the conference, I want to say thank you, Will. And, I want to say I appreciate everything you've done in the past. I appreciate you giving us market access to your accomplishments, to the things, your pain points that you've had to go through. People are going to, they've already learned a lot, just in this short hour, but they're going to learn a hell of a lot more when they come to this summit, the Food Intelligence Summit. So on that note, we're running about an hour. I know you're a busy man. Did you have your new grandchild? Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a girl. She was number 6, and I've got another one coming in October. It'll be number 7.
Are you going to get soft in your and I'm not going to say old age, in your experience age?
Well, it is old. I've always been soft.
Well, one thing I do know is you're very pragmatic. You live life with first principles, based on first principles. You're extremely transparent, and you do everybody a lot of good just by your purpose in life and the form of communications that you use. I love your little note to Bill Gates. You think he'll show up at that Food Intelligence Summit? You invited him. It's an open invitation.
Mr. Gates hadn't responded. I guess he's probably pretty busy. And but I didn't. So the way that happened is that this was an Instagram exchange, and I don't do Instagram, but my daughter, who does manage our Instagram, will occasionally ask me a question that comes up, or if there's a lot of focus on something, she'll ask me to comment on it, and I'll write it down on a piece of paper and she'll post it. And the question had been asked apparently a lot to her through the media, social media, about how we felt about Bill Gates owning so much land. I didn't realize that hating Bill Gates was something that was vogue these days. I don't hate Bill Gates. I don't know Bill Gates.
Right.
I'm unapologetic about anything I said. I stand behind every friggin' word of it. But my goal was not to eat up Bill Gates. I know enough about him to know that his answer for everything is more technology.
Yeah.
And I know better than most that misused technology is what got us in the mess we're in now. Misapplied technology. I'm not anti-technology, but
no, not at all.
Vehemently opposed to misapplied technology. And we've talked about a little of that, the applying that factory model to this complex system that's the land in the ecosystem. So the idea of a man, a person or entity, a woman who is focused on technology as a solution for everything, gaining more and more land, when the answer is not technology. The answer is understanding the cycles of nature and cooperating with them and helping them to operate optimally to provide the bounty of nature. That's what we live on. That's I'm going to preach here, but I'm going to say this. So if we buy land every time we get the opportunity, if we can afford it. And last summer, I bought a little piece of land that joined us, and I paid $1,850 an acre for it. And that's the market for non-irrigated farms in Bluffton, Georgia. And I was going to the closing at the lawyer's office, and CNN told me that gold was $2,040 an ounce. And it staggered me that an ounce of gold could be worth more than an acre of land. That is really bad, screwed up economics. They are both non-depreciating assets. There aren't many non-depreciating assets. Gold, or precious metals, precious gems, maybe art, just land.
Yeah.
But, so, and gold is better than land in terms of it's transportable and a little more liquid. You can get your money a little quicker. But past that, land has got it all over an ounce of gold. And for there to be an ounce of gold worth more than an acre of land tells me that anybody knows what to do with an ounce of gold. I mean, you can put it in your drawer, you can wear it around your neck, you can put it in your deposit box. But an acre of land, there really aren't many of us that know what to do with an acre of land. And Bill Gates damn sure ain't one of them.
He's the last damn person, and to tell you the truth, he's the last damn person that should be in technology too, because his misapplied technology is the reason we got here. I can say that because I come from, from agriculture ranching as a child, but as an adult, I was in big tech. And I guarantee you, I can say a lot about the nefarious things that Bill Gates has done to get to where he is, and for his intentions moving forward. That's the last man in the world that needs to own just 1 acre of land, like you said. Because if you look at gold right now, most people don't even own gold; they own a gold note. Used to you owned a gold coin, and then we have a dollar. And it was backed by gold. Well, that dollar's not backed by gold anymore, and even the gold notes, you don't even know if you can cash that in. So as far as the value that we live, that's something that is tangible in this world anymore. Well, it's not monetary. What it is, it's that acre of land that actually is a universe of wealth within the soil itself. And once like you said, there's very few people that understand the complexities of that and the true unlimited value of that land. And that's something I think a lot of people are starting to understand that we've abused. And there's a lot of younger generational people looking at it saying, hey, I want to get that acre of land and need to learn how to engineer it with the type of technology that got us here. And somebody like Will Harris is that person. And so that's where we are. We're in that perfect storm of redefining what value is, what a true store of value is, and how to, in the Bitcoin space, that's digital gold. A lot of people like to say what it is. And so that's where the education needs to come from, moving forward is technology that is a store of value, just like the land used to be and just like the cow used to be. And they're all converging into one place now, one environment, one thing, and here we go. I think it's a perfect storm to really redefine what value is. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is extremely important for people to really learn, relearn, or have a different perception and perspective towards. So, $1,800 an acre, is that pretty good for that area, Georgia?
That was, that's kind of the market, 1,850 then. It's gone up some. Inflation is ubiquitous. Yeah. So it's gone up some now, but it's again, this is a very, very, very poor county, and it's a long way to most of the land bought like that is for recreational purposes. And
sure.
Not a lot of farmers clamoring to own more and more non-irrigated farms. So and if you're a doctor or lawyer or Indian chief in an economy, a place like Albany, Georgia, Dothan, Alabama, Tallahassee, Florida, or Columbus, Georgia, we're 50 or 60 miles from any of those. So if you're a person with disposable income that wants to buy a recreational property, you can get it before you get to Bluffton.
Right. Well, I guess that bodes well for you for basically stewarding the land, stewarding the community like you do, stewarding, opportunities for people that come in to experience White Oak Pastures, either through the internship program or one of your tours, or now with the Food Intelligence Summit. So saying that, is there anything as we wrap up here, Will, that you would like to, express or, tell the world? We're going to try to get this spread out. I know that your team is helping my team get the word out for the Beef Initiative Food Intelligence Summit that's being hosted by White Oak Pastures. So anything else you got before we close this thing out, Will?
I look forward to shaking your hand in Bluffton, Georgia, and I invite all y'all to come and let me show you what we do.
I appreciate that, Will. I'm looking forward to. I'll get there a day early or so. And I'll come in and bug you, and we'll shake hands, and we're gonna do our best to put on the best weekend that a lot of people probably haven't had in a long time, and so we're working hard to get there. So everybody, say thank you to Will Harris. Reach out to him at White Oak Pastures. Look at the website. Look him up on the YouTube channel. Look up, on Twitter. It's at White Oak Pastures. We've had it streaming. There's plenty of information you can look into. You can contact. You can learn more. But the best place to be is in Bluffton, Georgia on September 16th. Everybody out there, remember that Texas Slim's vision is now podcasting 2.0. You can stack and stream sats. You can boost. You can give us a message. We're going to start reading out more and more of guys participating in this new decentralized way of communicating where we're not censored. We don't have to worry about what we're saying. We don't have to, be thrown off these platforms, and we're moving forward there. Will, you have a great day. We're going to get back to work here, trying to get people to Bluffton, Georgia. So good to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy it.
Thank you, Will. We'll see you soon. Here at the Beef Initiative, we encourage all you ranchers out there to tell us who and where you are so we can let everybody know. They're looking for you. This time I'm shouting out K&C Cattle out of Austin, Texas. KNCCattle.com. Cole, he's a fourth generational Texas rancher. He knows what he's doing.